Good evening, everyone, and perhaps morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. A very warm welcome. It is an honor to introduce Studio INHAF's 13th webinar today, which forms part of a series of 30 webinars being organized with several partners. Why 30? Because of the complexity of the overarching theme that we seek to cover, and that is urbanization. Worldwide, by the year 2050, we are expecting 2/3 of the world's people to live in urban areas. But the way in which urbanization unfolds is not the same everywhere. For instance, India is in fact one of the least urbanized countries in the global south. We are still a predominantly rural country, but in terms of numbers alone, the urban challenge is staggering. India holds 377 million people in its 7,900 odd cities and towns. And yet, even there are statewide differences. For instance, only 7 of India's 29 states and 7 union territories account for 62% of the urban population. And so, our notions of how and even why cities are growing is evolving. We do know this, though, that the city is the engine of economic growth. However, the record of channeling the accompanying urban growth and managing development is a different story. A story of lost opportunity, neglect, mismanagement. A consequence perhaps of the inability to neither understand urbanization nor respond to it adequately. Our cities are struggling to cope in most respects, be it the economy, the environment, governance, finance, institutions, housing, sustainability, mobility. The list is endless depending on where you start and what your vantage point might be. This year, that struggle was brought sharply into focus. One of the fallouts from the COVID-19 crisis is its severe impact on the informal economy that forms nearly 80 to 90% of our labor force. Going forward, beyond the crisis, the country will have to acknowledge what was earlier our invisible workforce, the conditions of working, living, why the entire social contract must change. We also cannot leave slum dwellers, the homeless, and other urban poor in their current conditions. Moreover, with climate change knocking on the door, if not already in, both the short-term problem solving and long-term planning must reckon with the sustainability framework. With all this, cities will need to be rethought and reorganized. Changing all this is no small task. Even if the current crisis leaves us with a new mindset and resolve, there are many scenarios as to what the country, its economy, its systems, and its approaches to the old and the new challenges will look like. For obvious reasons, there are divergent opinions as to the path ahead. As we think of a departure from the conventional understanding of urbanization and find a creative response, and even though there may be a chance that our systems and approaches could be different, a suggestion is that we see the change embedded in the old normal rather than the new normal within existing governance, attitude, institutions, and mindsets. Some of us have begun the search for correctives and better ways of seeing and doing things. The proposed webinars are a part of this process and seen as opening the much needed societal dialogue on how we handle urbanization and develop cities so that they remain engines of economic growth without the exploitative instinct and systems that are inherent. The series is an integral part of and will feed into an initiative that Habitat Forum launched last year called Echeverri, Citizens Urban Initiative. It is a multi-level and multidisciplinary effort spearheaded by some of India's urban and related professionals, development thinkers, and practitioners to work on a blueprint that outlines the country's response to the urban challenge in a way that ensures productive, inclusive, sustainable, livable, and humane cities. We seek to do 3 things. 1, reassess India's urban challenge. 2, rethink Indian cities. And 3, reformulate the response in the context of national development challenges, not only urban challenges. One of the reasons for proposing these webinars at this time is the current situation that we are in, where the virtual world has entered our lives in such a big way, and people are in a reflective state of mind. even if temporarily, prepared to invest energy and time. There is a sense of occasion for such an initiative, and the suggestion is to do the most with it. The earlier webinars have already covered some ground and are in the public domain for those interested. Some of the themes that will be elaborated in the coming month include gender responsive urban spaces, young India, technology, and natural, not mega cities. Now, not taking away any more time from what we are here for today, I will now hand over to Dr. Anjali Mohan, an urban and regional planner with over 2.5 decades in the sector, and who is the anchor for today's webinar on urbanization as governability issue. Is collaborative governance the solution?
Thank you, Kaya. Good evening, and thanks to INHAF and the team here for giving us this opportunity. I would like to start by giving a short introduction to the very wonderful panel that I have here with us, as well as the theme that the panel is going to engage on. My first panelist is Alejandro Echeverri from the city of Medellin, Colombia. He is the director of URBAM, the Center for Urban and Environmental Studies at IAFIT University in Medellin. While he has many medals to his name, he is here today to speak of his experience of having pioneered and implemented the social urbanism strategy, a strategy that has led to the improvement of the most impoverished neighborhoods in the city of Medellin. This strategy turned the city of Medellin, and today the city is a blueprint for similar distressed cities worldwide. Social urbanism foregrounds collaborations at various scales, but most importantly, the role of the city government and the story around that is an amazing one, something that we look forward to hearing. We welcome you, Alejandro. Our next panelist will be Kanchi Kohli, who works at the intersection of environment, forests, and biodiversity governance in India. As we all know, the most recent catastrophe to hit the urban landscape is that of environmental challenges and climate change. The most disproportionately impacted in these catastrophes are the urban and the marginalized. Not only do their voices need to be heard, but addressing the larger issues of environment also requires institutions to step beyond their comfort zones to collaborate on solutions that clearly cut across hierarchies and silos. So welcome, Kanchi, and we look forward to hearing you on this. Our third panelist is Professor Jacob Torfing, who is the Research Director at the Roskilde School of Governance, Copenhagen. Network forms of governance or collaborative governance are his primary research interests. And he will be throwing light on how collaboration spurs innovation, why is it needed, how it can be forged, how it can be practiced, and how it can be enhanced. After that, next we will have Dr. Ashwin Mahesh speaking to us. Ashwin is a social technologist and an urbanist based in Bangalore. While he's trained as a scientist and as an astronomer, he switched to social enterprise, and his primary focus is on urban development and governance. Although he works with several governments across the country in various capacities, it is his continuous endeavor to, and if I may call it crowdsourcing of public problem solvers, that renders his experience extremely critical to today's panel. His belief and work in leveraging problem solvers from various backgrounds and contexts feeds directly into collaborative governance, modes of governance. And finally, we have with us Binju from PRADAN, an organization, an NGO that has been working with the poor and the marginalized. In fact, the most marginalized amongst the marginalized for several decades. PRADAN is primarily active in the rural landscapes of central and eastern India. And the reason for getting a rural experience into this panel, which is largely rethinking cities, is the following. PRADAN and Binju's experience has actually, especially in context of the pandemic today, PRADAN has seen its belief or its motto of alone we cannot and together we can unfold, especially in the past 4 to 5 months while it was responding to the pandemic. PRADAN, along with multiple stakeholders and the state being an important one, has managed to prepare communities to face the public health crisis. A crisis which eventually has taken several shades and hues and colors, and the most critical of which is it manifesting as a livelihoods and an economic emergency. In the context of the pandemic, I personally believe that urban India has much to learn from the rural, especially in the space of governance. So I welcome this very diverse and eclectic panel. I am honored to be anchoring this discussion today. There is a clear thread that connects all the diverse experiences that we have present here. Very quickly, to just conclude with the theme, the 20th century city and the underlying urbanization processes, while a driver of growth, is also closely linked to the rural, the marginalized, and the disenfranchised, especially in the rural. Thus, the binary of the rural and the urban needs to be addressed collectively and collaboratively. There is a wide acknowledgement that collaboration in governance is the need of the hour, especially in dealing with the wide panoply of wicked problems, be these the access to or provision of basic services, or employment and livelihoods, or the environmental challenges. Yet, how does the state collaborate? What should be its role in this collaboration? How can the core ideas of decentralization and democracy that underpin collaboration, how can we activate these ideas? All this requires an enhanced thinking and further unpacking. Collaborative governance models require an active agency both of the state and the non-state actors. How these agencies negotiate and mediate with each other to find solutions will be the focus of the discussions for the next hour or so. So with this, I would now like to invite my panelists. For everyone's benefit, the panel is structured by presentations or talks by each of the panelists for about 8 to 10 minutes, after which we will open it up for discussions and conclusions. So with this, I invite Alejandro to start off with his presentation. Welcome, Alejandro, and we look forward to hearing you.
So thank you, Anjali, and thank you, Keya, and hello all the panelists and the people that are now with us. I am now in Medellin, Colombia in the morning. So we are very well here, and as well, we are in this strange crisis. No? So I will share my presentation and share with you some ideas. Give me 1 minute. I put the presentation on the screen. Okay, it's okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So everywhere, we are now in a very strange moment. This crisis of COVID-19 changed many things for all of us. And for us as well, we are not strange in crisis. We have a very profound crisis in Medellin and Colombia, and in the 1900s and 2000s. And so this invitation, I will explain to you some processes that we developed in Medellin in the last 15 years that could connect with this idea of urbanization, governance, and partnership, the collaborative platforms of partnerships. And Colombia is located in the north part of South America, linked with Panama. You see Panama on the left, and at the same time links the Caribbean Ocean on the north and with the Pacific Ocean in the southwest. And it is the end of the Andes Mountains. So Medellin is located in the center of the Andes corridor in Colombia, in a very complex geography. And Medellin is a city and the metropolitan area is about 3.5 million inhabitants, and it's a very segregated city. That you see in the plan, in the map, in the north part of Medellin, where the darker browns are located, are the poorest areas. It's close to the 40% of the population. Most of them, the origin was informal. So the reality of Medellin is not different from the realities of the cities of the global south. The image of the north shows you the hills and slopes of the valley of Medellin that we call the comunas of the north, where close to the 40% of the population is located. And in the center and in the south, you see a completely different reality. And we apply this strategy of social urbanism, and we start in 2004 when I was working with the municipality, and at that time the mayor and the leader of the process was the mayor Sergio Fajardo. And the idea was to focus the different programs, the different infrastructural, social infrastructural services like transport, culture, education, public spaces, but at the same time, programs of education, innovation, and so on, located in a very strategic areas of the city. So the first idea was to select 5 or 6 areas. And in 4 years, we focused our strategy in 3 of them. And the idea was to develop an integral transformations that could coordinate the capacity of the municipality in those areas. With the idea not to transform all the city, but to start to change the narrative and the social psychology, and to include those territories in the services of everyday life. One key issue were and are today the public transport system. So the city developed a metro line that connect the south to the north and the east to the west. And at the same time, because the geography, we developed this idea of cable cars. These cables of telefericos that connect the stations with the slopes with a very complex problems. But the most important concept was the integral coordination of the investment and the different programs and projects in each territory. So the strategy developed a coordination inside the municipality and with the outside of the partners that trying to combine infrastructural services like public spaces, new housing programs, recovery environmental challenges and so on, with the programs of education, innovation, and so on. So this picture is in the northeast part of the city, which the first cable car were built, and the first phase of the integral interventions, and you could see some areas, new areas of public spaces that link small streets with small creeks that connect the different barrios or neighborhoods that cross the creeks as well, trying to develop a strategy that were very connected with the itineraries of the everyday life of the people. So the most important process was how the people engage with the process and define with the governance and the municipality those itineraries, those small links, the bridges and so on that take them to the schools and the transport stations. Another idea was how to develop integral processes in this challenge of informal housing in risk areas. So the first idea was to improve the quality of the existing houses, relocate the others in the possible close neighborhoods, not taking them outside of the city, trying to keep the place where they live in the same places and so on, and improve as well the existing housings and build small housing units located in the areas where where they used to live. So this strategy links with the cable cars, with the new schools, with the library parks in a very complex coordination. So I will share some ideas that support those projects. First was the politics. The crisis in 2000 and in the 90s, because the crisis of the drugs and the violence here in Colombia and in Medellin opened the space that the new civic movements reach the municipality, and a new mayor, a new civic group could change and could as well engage a lot of different organizations. So this idea of that construct a new political agenda, new narrative was very important, giving priority to the zones of poverty of the most problematic areas that links poverty with violence. At the same time, using and selecting those organizations and strategies that could mediate and could as well integrate services. And at the same time, trying to cultivate a new civic imagination in the city. But for that was necessary to change some structural coordination in the governments, that we need to transform some municipal bureaucracy in more transparent and fluent processes, and giving a new protocols and agreements with local organizations, private academy and governance as well. And at the same time, was very important to bring a new intelligence, a very good people to the governments, designers, people that have been working with social problems and at the same time with education. But for doing that, one thing that was very important is that we intervene, we transform the territory, the public space, and the strategy of social urbanism help to coordinate those ideas in strategic territories. So it was very important to select in a very strategic way the location of those integral interventions, these limits or frontiers between informal areas and new areas as well. So to change and to trying to include the communities in the process of the development of the city. The public space was very important because the war in Medellin and the crisis produced that we lose the confidence in the city. We start to be enclosure in our own houses and schools and so on, and the confidence of the city to each other was very complex at that time. So the public spaces, the public encounters in a very strategic locations start to change this behavior and change the narrative of the people. At the same time, this idea needs, one of the most important things that happens in Medellin was that the governance have the opportunity to develop different kinds of partnerships with communities in the popular neighborhoods, with private sector as well in different areas, with academy. So in the back of all the processes, the most important thing are not the infrastructural and the buildings and the bricks. The most important are the different kinds of agreements that produce the processes and the projects. This image shows you one of the last ones, that is the innovation center that links to the north with the south, and the most important partners became the community, the academy, the researchers, the private, and the governance as well. The other idea that is very important and very difficult when you are in a government is how to coordinate and integral interventions that could articulate different physical interventions like public transport systems, public spaces, houses, with programs like education, innovation. All of them belongs to different units in the governance. So one thing that was very important was that how to coordinate that. But after 15 years, I could say that the city starts to change, but the continuity is fragile too. In all the global south cities and in the majority of the world, it's very complex to give continuity to the different governance. In Medellin, we have in some kind of continuity, but after 15 years, we could see which programs or projects are more sustainable today, and the key link and the key idea that they share is that the programs that has from the beginning a more strong base of participation and engage the local capacity of the community and could connect different partners in the process from the beginning, those programs and projects are more sustainable today. After 15 years, you could see this picture with clarity. So those are some ideas that I will like to share with you. And again, thank you for the invitation. And I am happy to share some other ideas in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. That was a very nice and a crisp presentation, bringing out the main ideas of participation, local engagement and ownership, and the criticality of these for a successful intervention. Thank you so much. I would now like to invite Kanchi and hear her views on the theme for today. Kanchi Kohli, over to you.
Thank you, Anjali, and thank you for this opportunity to be part of this panel. I'm sure I'm going to be learning a lot as I share what I have to say with all of you. And I look forward to the question and answers as well. What I'll basically try and do is talk about, you know, the questions of public participation and collaborative governance around lived environment and public space. And before I go into illustrating this through some of the citizens' movements that we've been witnessing around the country today, I just wanted to just flag, which I think a lot of us might already know, but how environment justice and urban spaces really, where they interface. And as we all know, I mean, you know, urban areas are highly stratified on caste, class, region, and that really determines, to a large extent, access to clean environment. Where geographies are located, colonies are located, your access to clean environment is highly dependent on that. That's point number one. Point number two is how, you know, urban areas, as we all know, are expanding all the time. The footprint is just increasing. And in some ways, it's leading to three sets of, you know, environmental questions for all of us. One, the distinction between urban and rural is actually diminishing. So, you know, urban areas are moving into rural areas, and, you know, rural areas are converging into becoming peri-urban areas. And it kind of, you know, for anybody working on environment, this becomes a big question to address. So, for instance, you have in movements in India which are looking at the Aravalli mountains near Delhi National Capital Region, where highways need to be passing, or you know, real estate construction is expanding, or you know, metro rail sheds are opening up near the RA forest in Mumbai, city of Mumbai, which there's a lot of reaction to. Or for that matter, the floodplains of Delhi, you know, of the river Yamuna in Delhi, are being used for as almost like dumping grounds for, say, compensatory afforestation or other kinds of construction and those kinds of things. So, I mean, this is symptomatic of different cities, but I'm sharing the examples that I'm more familiar with. The third kind of you know, urban expansion and environmental question becomes that of waste management, and where does actually urban waste really go, and that's invariably in these peri-urban areas where landfills are located, and there's a lot of reaction from those communities that is coming in that we've seen. The third, I mean, this is the second pool. The third big problem that I wanted to talk about when it comes to lived environment and public space, where questions of collaborative governance can be explored, is we're going through a phase of not urban development, but an urban redevelopment. So, you know, urban areas are actually really being redeveloped in the heart of the city. And that's where prime real estate is. The actors are very different. So this question of redevelopment becomes a big problem, where you see flyovers, you see private real estate opening up. We are talking about the government footprint itself. So cities like Delhi are seeing huge amounts of public spaces being taken by government offices or expansion of, say, parliament buildings and those kinds of things, which become a big question because these are spaces which citizens are using on an everyday, either for recreation or just reprieve from dense environments that they live in. But what is happening is that when these kinds of issues are happening, and particularly with I'll zone down to the question of redevelopment in the city, or dig deeper into it. Most of the areas that are being redeveloped are being seen as empty spaces. So it's like either being seen as empty spaces or being thought of being redeveloped as you need to raise it down and then recreate something. So, big environmental questions definitely come up, and big and socio-ecological questions come up in these spaces that we are talking about, which are being converted. So just with this background, I just wanted to flag that, environmental governance frameworks and environment regulation is actually playing catch up with this kinds of new realities. It's actually playing catch up because they have not really been designed to respond to these questions at all. They've not been designed, and wherever there is, there's some possibility of looking at environmental questions of lived environments or public participation in lived environment, they're very feeble and can be really twisted and molded. Now, I'll illustrate this through one example of an ongoing. And this is, again, I said this will be definitely part of several urban areas. But what I'll talk about is one particular redevelopment project in New Delhi, which is popularly known as the 7 GPRA project. GPRA. GPRA is basically because it's government pool residential housing that we are talking about. And there are these 7 colonies in the heart of Delhi, which is currently prime real estate, that the government wants to rebuild as government housing, but alongside also commercialize a huge amount of space. What happened is this, around this, when this whole process was initiated, there was a huge citizens movement that started in Delhi. It was not like Delhi had not seen citizens movements against protection of environment or trees before, but somehow, this was an important moment because of the air pollution crisis. People were getting environmentally, I think, impatient with no action with the government with respect to environment, and were demanding certain very critical things when this redevelopment was taking place. And this redevelopment actually becomes is very symptomatic of what were the questions people were asking in terms of seeking a space to participate in decision-making around redevelopment in Delhi. And the reason I say this is because even though these were government colonies in the heart of Delhi, it has a bunch of actors that was using the space all the time. So while on the one hand there was government contractors, private contractors that were wanting to rebuild the space, on the other hand, there were people who were using these spaces all the time. There were schools. There were people who actually planted those trees and actually gone somewhere else. There was a big market that people were using. So these areas were seen as actually public use areas as much as government colonies because they were open access. They were not gated communities. So being open access, people wanted to suddenly say, this is, government can't treat this as your land. This is a land being held in public trust. So we need to be part of the decision-making around these spaces. Now this whole example actually brings out, the campaign was bringing out many questions, but at least 3 big questions. One was master planning and urban planning, how it needs to take on board questions of environment regulation. So you can't, plan for redevelopment differently and do environmental impact assessments and environmental planning separately. So for the purposes of the master plan, you pool 7 colonies and you commercialize. For the purposes of environmental footprint assessment or environmental impact assessment, you treat them as separate blocks and assess what's happening there. That became a big bone of contention, saying that if you want to see this as a composite whole, see the environment of the place as a composite whole, and let's not separate it out, separate out the social ecologies of that place. The second big question was basically redevelopment projects like this have very little environmental scrutiny. While you were taking a large area, these kinds of redevelopment projects don't need to go through even government-led environment impact assessment, leave alone scope for public participation. So there is no public hearings for these redevelopment, even though these are public use spaces. So those big questions started coming up. And the third big question that came up was the very emotive question around trees, or recreation space, trees as social spaces that people were using there. And the big question that came up is that our tree laws in the country are just not simply designed for large-scale tree felling. It's responding to 1, 2, 3, 4 sort of trees being cut in neighborhoods. It's not responding to 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 trees that are going to be cut for in urban development projects. And linked with that is that citizens were demanding, saying, you've not done a tree census in this area for the last, for the last 10, 15 years. How do you even know how many trees are there? So we as citizens want to be part of that process. So with this example, I just want to end by saying that, there's a huge learning curve and a huge curve that we need to really cross when it comes to converging environmental issues and urban governance issues. And particularly, these gaps really become big opportunities right now, because almost all cities across India are actually going through these processes, where we could, raise questions about, can we do redevelopment without really, or urban expansion without really raising down lived ecologies? Why do you need to actually pull down everything and rebuild over it? And that's the general perception, and that's how the design is really working. Second issue is about public participation in designing and impact assessments around these decisions. So that becomes a big opportunity where the lived experience with this place can be brought in. And finally, people know their trees, they know their wetlands, and these are not empty spaces. Not empty spaces when it comes to even people's lived experiences, which can be brought in when it comes to collaborative governance. So I just want to say that while these might appear as gaps, these are also great opportunities for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanchi. Thanks much for foregrounding these questions on environment, intersection of environment, planning and governance. These are extremely critical, as also, talking about lived ecologies and lived experiences, and how do we start to foreground these, especially in terms of when we are looking at models of governance. Thank you, and we look forward to more questions and discussions on this. I will now invite Professor Jacob Torfing to give his presentation and to talk to us about collaborative models of governance and innovation. Also, very quickly, I'm requesting the attendees to please put your question and answers in the Q&A box. Yeah, Professor Torfing, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the invitation, for having me here. I'm just struggling here with having my slides to work. Okay, now they're working. Okay, thank you for letting me participate in this interesting conversation, and also for the two first presentations that really demonstrated the value of collaborative governance, both in terms of developing new solutions and urban infrastructures, and also in settling conflicts over scarce spaces with multiple uses. I'll be talking about another value of collaborative governance or collaboration more generally, and that is the ability of collaboration to spur innovation in urban governance. And I will not offer a lot of interesting empirical examples, although I am currently studying urban climate change mitigation through a co-creation perspective, but I will give more of an overview of my research on collaborative innovation. Okay, so First of all, I've been fascinated by the fact that we have been studying innovation in the private sector for more than a century, and barely started a conversation about innovation in the public sector. Actually, I'm often hearing also from practitioners and other researchers that we cannot even talk about public and innovation almost in the same sentence. Many people believe or have believed that public innovation is almost like a contradiction in terms. Because the public sector has very little incentives for innovation, very little competition. It has, in the opposite, quite a lot of rules and top-down hierarchical government, and is very unfit to innovate. But fortunately, all this is changing, and this is what kind of drives my research, is to look at how we can actually spur public innovation. First of all, the important thing is the growing focus on innovation. And let's see if I can change the slide here. Yeah, and here you see, I try to use this, this famous Hollywood production, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, to explain the drivers of public innovation. Because first of all, and that is a good and very positive driver or motivation to pursue innovation, we have high political and professional ambitions at the city level. We want to do better. We want to develop infrastructures, urban dwellings, etc. Fight, provide better services, and we see that if we want to do better, we often have to do something new. We have to innovate. But then there's also the bad, and that is the proliferation of wicked problems, really complex problems, which at the city level is shown by, for example, by poverty, congestion, pollution, climate change, all these urban modern problems that we need to find solution to, and problems that are hard to solve if we don't innovate. So that is actually another driver of innovation. And then we also have the ugly, and the ugly is that many cities, many public sectors worldwide are caught in this crossfire between, increasing demands and increasing expectations from the citizens, and at the same time, very scarce public resources. And in order to kind of make ends meet, we often have to work not harder, but smarter. We have to be more innovative. So, fortunately, I think contrary to many established views on this, I actually do think that the public sector is much more dynamic, much more innovative than its current reputation. But the main problem, as I see it, in terms of spurring innovation, is that, well, we do see a lot of public innovation, but it's very often very episodic and very accidental. So when is it that we innovate? Well, that's what we do when we have new national laws from above that the city has to adjust to, when we have new technological opportunities that we try to respond to, when we certainly have negative media coverage of what the local government do, then the government becomes very eager to innovate and do new things in response. And sometimes we are really lucky, we get access to special purpose funding at the local level, and that will trigger new experiments that will create some innovation. Or even better, we recruit new urban managers who in the beginning are very, very eager to innovate, and then they see all the obstacles and barriers, and then they calm down and become really settled again. So what I think we have on the agenda for the public sector at the urban level is to start working much more, start to work with innovation at a more permanent basis, at a more systematic basis, and to work with innovation, pervasively across all agencies and across all parts of the public sector. So what we need are like methods and procedures and standard operational procedures. How do we actually innovate? How do we bring together actors? So I'm already talking about public innovation and the need for that and the drivers of that. Without really defining the term. So what is important for me when defining innovation is that innovation is both the development and the implementation of new ideas. So very often we get together and we have new ideas about how to run the city, how to provide better services and infrastructures and so on for urban dwellers. But getting new ideas is a creative process, and it's only halfway to the bank. So in order to have innovation, we need not only to develop develop new creative ideas, but we actually need to implement them in practice and consolidate new ideas and see them having an effect. Not before that will we see a real innovation. So when I talk about innovation, it's really a step change. It's more than continuous improvement of services. It is really a step change that, you know, you do something new, create new services, new service systems, new way of governing in the city that breaks with the common wisdom, how we used to do things, and also break with established practices. So what I'm saying here is, you know, that innovation is really more than the continuous improvement we strive for every day in our practices, but it's perhaps even less, a little less than the big radical transformation. So it's like finding the middle ground between these two things. So I'm, of course, being very interested in how do we actually spur innovation in response to wicked problems and scarce resources and to fulfill ambitions and so on. And what I've been seeing in many countries where, you know, looking at innovation strategies is that the public sector at first was very, very kind of inspired by the private sector. So we saw that in the private sector, who are the big innovators? Well, that's the big inventors of new technologies, or is the very courageous, risk-taking business leaders. So we adopted this image in the public sector that we should look for the public innovation heroes and see, you know, who are the innovation heroes that could drive innovation in the public sector. And I think we wasted a lot of time doing this because, you know, alternating, we saw elected politicians, public managers, private contractors, or public employees, or even end users as the main protagonists of public innovation. And I think this has been a waste of time because most often it is not innovation is not driven by lone wolves, not by singular actors, be them either public or private. What we see most often is actually that public innovation is a collective achievement. It's a team sport where we have many actors coming together to produce innovative solutions. So that has been a main occupation in my research and in my publication recently, to argue in favor of a collaborative approach to innovation. But I'm not saying, of course, that hierarchy kids cannot mobilize resources, set a new direction, and innovate. I just think that public hierarchies are limited in their innovative efforts because they are not including enough voices in their innovative endeavors. And I'm not saying either that markets cannot spur innovation. Of course, you know, markets has the, you know, opportunity to invite many different actors to think about new ideas and so on. But the limitation of markets really is that we often end up with rivalry instead of knowledge sharing. We end up with competition instead of collaboration, where you can come together and share ideas and test out new ideas in practice. So that is really why I think that taking a collaborative approach to innovation, bringing together public and private actors in partnerships and networks, etc., is, you know, perhaps the most effective strategy, has the most potentiality for enhancing for enhancing innovation. So my argument is basically that all phases of an innovation process is kind of you know, strengthened and improved in quality by multi-actor collaboration. Already, you know, setting an agenda, if you take an initiative to do something new and voices come from many perspectives and angles, you are much better equipped, you know, to set the agenda and try out something new. Understanding a problem, again, if you have many actors around the table, you will get a much more nuanced understanding of the problem, and you may see that the media constructed idea of the problem is false, and you may actually achieve a completely new take on the problem that makes it more manageable in some ways. And it's pretty obvious that the more people you have to provide idea around the table, the richer will be idea generation. And you know, it's not so difficult to get new brilliant ideas. You just need to mobilize generate a lot of new ideas and throw away the bad ideas, and then you will have a bunch of ideas in the end that you can kick around and scrutinize and start to integrate. And this is often where innovation really begins, is learning from each other, putting together new ideas and trying to develop prototypes and test them in practice. And then when you come to implementation, again, if you have many actors engaged in collaboration, you will have the ability to coordinate, and you will also often have a joint ownership to new ideas, which is such a big thing in terms of accelerating and facilitating implementation, because joint ownership breaks down implementation resistance. And finally, when you got your new brilliant, wonderful, innovative idea to work in practice, you will have, through collaboration, recruited so many ambassadors of the new innovative idea that you can easily diffuse it so that other agencies, other localities, other cities will be able to benefit from the achievements by adopting and adapting innovative ideas to their particular context. So what is important for me, just briefly, when talking about collaboration, I'm not talking about, you know, this long, tiresome, cumbersome search for unanimous consent. I think that total consensus is something we rarely achieve. And I think it's also sometimes detrimental to innovation, because getting everybody on board, is often impossible. And also, if we develop a complete total consensus, it's often by agreeing on the least common denominator, which is often very shallow and not really worth talking about as an innovation. We don't agree, all of us, about something very bold and daring and so on. So what I'm talking about is collaboration as the constructive management of differences. I actually think differences between different voices and opinions is crucial for innovation. And what we have to do is not to eliminate disputes and conflicts and differences, but try to find a constructive way of managing different voices and inputs in order to agree on joint solutions to common problems. And such collaborative innovation also often takes place in different kinds of networks and partnerships where actors join because they realize that they are dependent on each other. They need to exchange resources and ideas, and some have authority, others have courage, others have good ideas, etc. Some have valuable experience that they bring to the table. So we form networks and partnerships to collaborate, to spur innovation. And that might throw up finally the question of what is the role for government? What is the role for elected government or administrators in orchestrating collaborative processes and collaborative innovation in networks and partnerships? I've been working with this idea for many years that we actually need a new role for government in relation to networks and partnerships and in relation to collaborative innovation, because I do think that networks and partnership must be somehow meta-governed. So what is meta-governance? Meta-governance is when state actors try to influence processes and outcomes of networks and partnerships, but doing so without reverting back to kind of traditional hierarchical forms of government based on command and control. And I would say this is a huge challenge for governments, because they often take over, and sometimes they do it out of good intentions, but they also often tend to oversteer partnerships and networks. And what is important for government agencies to learn as in this role or capacity of being meta-governors is somehow to find the right balance. And that means not to oversteer and do too much and pacify the participants in network governance, but also to avoid understeering and letting conflicts develop to the point where they become destructive and are not just positive drivers of innovation. So So I'm a big fan of a new role for governments in meta-governing. That is to say, their role should be to govern self-governing spaces and networks and partnership. And they have, I think, various tools in their toolbox to do this. You know, first of all, there's important role for local government and city government to create new institutional designs, that is platforms and arenas where public and private actors can come together, develop trust and collaboration, and try to invent new innovative solutions to wicked problems. So institutional design is a crucial meta-governance tool. Another thing is framing collaboration, you know, inventing storylines and also doing financial and political framing of these arenas and platforms and processes of collaboration. City governments also have to intervene as facilitators and orchestrators and do process management. Sometimes you need to build trust between actors, very often actually, and you also need to step in as a conflict mediator, and sometimes also as a catalyst of change, of, you know, disturbing a collaborative arena to make them think out of the box. And finally, I also think that, you know, direct participation of government actors is very important, because it's important that we are not developing new solutions in isolation from government that the government will not take up. That is what I see very often when you create spaces for citizen participation where government actors are not present. Then we end up with very brilliant, innovative ideas and policy proposals, but very limited government take up. So I'm all in favor of these mixed zones and collaborative spaces, but I also do think there is a role for city government in meta-governing these spaces to facilitate collaboration and spur innovation, and hopefully through that create value both for citizens and for society as a whole. So in my research, I'm very interested in also connecting discussions about public value creation with collaborative innovation, and I see a big role for collaborating networks in producing public value. I'm not trying to deny here all the barriers and drive and impediments and so on, but I think we have a good shot at transforming government, opening up government agencies, creating these collaborative spaces, because both government and the people has long seen the need for public innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Torfing. And thank you also for foregrounding the role of the government, mainly as a meta-governor. But of course, a fundamental question that does come to mind is that how do you transition from a command and control center to one that is able to negotiate and mediate amongst various stakeholders? But we'll take that up subsequently. May I now request Dr. Ashwin Mahesh to please pass the forum on to him and ask him to put his views forward, especially in context of the public problem solving experiment that he has been involved in. Over to you, Ashwin.
Thank you, Anjali. I'm just going to take a minute to share my screen. And can you see that?
Yes.
Put that on full screen.
Yes.
So there you go. That's good?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to talk about neighborhood improvement partnerships. And I'll tell you why. And I work with this idea that many more people can imagine and help co-create the cities that they live in. A lot of the stuff that I now do is through what I am beginning to call the How Institute. It started off as what I call a center for public problem solving. And I sort of evolved that to the idea that knowing how to solve public problems is actually an interesting question by itself, in addition to asking what the solutions are. I work with broadly 4 guiding principles. Development is not just a set of outcomes. It's not about saying, you know, more kids are going to school and more people are healthy and so forth. Those are good things. But development is actually more than that. Development is a balance between the state, market, and society. That itself is development. It's not what this balance produces that's development. That's something else. That's good too. But this balance is a very important part of what development is. The second thing that I work with is that the idea that the state, market, and society should not try to seek progress independently in their own silos. Each must help the other two become better. So as a government, one of its responsibilities is to help market and society become stronger. And as citizens, one of our responsibilities is to help make state and market better. And market businesses have a responsibility to help both citizens and the government. The third principle is that in each of these spaces, state, market, and society, each one should be able to begin solving problems without waiting for the other two. I, as an ordinary citizen, must be able to do things even if businesses don't, and even if the governments don't. And that's an important thing. Otherwise, you end up waiting for everything to come together. So being able to autonomously act is important. And all of this together adds up to a larger principle, which is that more than looking for solutions, we must increase the number of problem-solving people. This is really the theory that I work with. The solutions will come, but what more and more of us need to work on is increasing the number of problem-solving people. The pace of change in our cities is very high. In Bangalore, 1,000 people come to the city every day, 1,000 people. That means you have to build, on any given day, you have to build 300 houses just to accommodate the people that come one day. And this is even without meeting the backlog of housing deficits. Public administration is struggling to keep pace with this change. Citizens can't expect government alone to solve its problem. It's clear the government is unable to solve lots of urban problems. Many citizens are willing to help, but they don't know how to help. At the same time, they're also reluctant to enter what they see as political space. They sort of want to stay away from politics. They see that as a bad thing, a scary thing, not their job, and so on and so forth. So in this presentation, I'm only going to talk about what you can do if you don't want to do political things. There's a whole set of things you can do if you're okay with doing political things. This is for people who don't want to do political things. Some kind of structured intervention is needed. The answer is there with us. The private sector has the skills to need it, which we need to tackle a lot of problems. In India, we have a CSR law that mandates companies to spend money on public problems. Companies want to use their money to solve problems, at least in the neighborhoods that they exist in. They also want employees to be involved in local communities, and that helps build better employees and also better communities where they live. And so you can put all of this together in a way that says companies can fund community-led solutions to local problems. Both are important. Businesses fund things, and community members, ordinary citizens, participate in solving problems themselves. This is possible. And this is possible to start even without the government being involved at the beginning. You have to figure out what to work on. And in order to figure out what to work on, it's important to know how the city works. And it also is important to know what are the gaps in the city. So it's useful to catch hold of the people who know a few things about the city, but not to expect them to participate in your projects, simply to say, what are some things that can be done in the city that would be useful? It's also useful to actually get elected representatives and public officials involved in these projects. But it's important not to go to them for permission to do these projects. You should go to them asking them to join you in implementing these projects. And these are very different stances. It's not about saying, please can we do this, or please we would like this improvement. It's more about saying, we would like to do this, we can fund this, we can work on this ourselves, we'd like you to work with us in doing this. And this is a very different approach. Some years ago, almost 7 or 8 years ago, I started this thing called the Neighborhood Improvement Partnership. It was actually a competition. It was open to any neighborhood association in the city. One of the large companies in the city, United Technologies, which makes air conditioners and aircraft engines and sort of many industrial products, they funded this initiative. 10 resident associations were given ₹1 million each to work on improvements in their local communities. Categories for the competition were identified. People could suggest initiatives in mobility, public safety, spaces, public space improvement, power, waste management, and reviving and restoring lakes. 100 communities applied. There was a very nice consultative process of working with the communities to understand and detail the projects in each of these areas. And through this process, 10 communities were identified for local improvements in their neighborhoods. And like I said, this is just a color-coded map to show that we got project submissions from different types of communities, proposing different things, environmental issues, mobility issues, energy management, waste management, all sorts of issues. And there was even a requirement that a set of the winning projects would need to be for improvements in poor neighborhoods. So you couldn't just propose these things in rich neighborhoods. What did we learn from this? We learned that these things are actually doable. We also learned that once you begin to do these things, it is possible in many, many areas to get local government, both elected representatives and officials, to engage with and accept how they can work on this with you. We also began to understand what the companies that do business in a city want and what sorts of things they're willing to support. We also get a handle on the cost of implementation. Once you've implemented some project yourself, you actually know how much such implementation should cost when government does it as well. And that makes it easier for you to sort of monitor what happens in government. And we were able to fine-tune the model in the first year. In the second year, we tried something else. We tried a much larger program focused on mobility, which was funded by a single company which cared about mobility. It was funded by Toyota. And Toyota cared about mobility more than anything else. And they came to us and they said, we will fund every single thing that is proposed in the mobility sector. And we worked on building a multi-year relationship through which many, many mobility projects could be funded. And some of them even went on to become startups in the city because they were given the support to begin by this funding. In the third year, we began to put together more stable models to say, look, we're going to work on five topics. In each topic, there's going to be one company, which is an anchor, but there are also going to be many, many smaller organizations that can partner to do these things with us. And what this allows us to do is build and maintain a suite of projects. And you can even accept rolling applications. And by the time we got to the third year, even the government was working with us to host neighborhood improvement competitions in different neighborhoods. So we had, for example, last year, something called the Better Hebal Challenge. Hebal is a neighborhood in the city in which architects and planners and others and residents groups in that neighborhood proposed some things. And now a collective effort from all those different proposals is actually being rolled out as a neighborhood improvement. Another thing that came out of all of this is that we learned how to build a technology platform that any neighborhood can use. And through this technology platform, you can begin to index where you are. How good is your road network compared to the rest of the city? How many parks and green spaces do you have compared to the rest of the city? How many lakes and water bodies do you have? How dense is the built up area in your neighborhood? And you can do all of these things in a way that allows local people themselves to collect data. This map on this page is a map of the quality of the footpaths in the neighborhood with the data being collected by the local residents themselves. And similarly, you can collect data on street lighting, signals, footpaths, crosswalks, cycling, signage, all sorts of things that then help you identify what kind of projects you can do locally to improve the neighborhood. And to my way of seeing things, this is the sort of initiative that can dramatically increase the number of people that participate in local projects. One of the things that I began to do, unfortunately, when the pandemic came along, is to work with an architecture school to say that for their final year thesis, architecture students in that school will work on one neighborhood each with the local residents to carry out interventions like this. So once you have a structured model, you can scale it to include the participation of many, many people. And it's through scaling the participation of people that we can really get to the kind of large outcomes that we expect to see in our cities. And I know all of this is doable. Anjali, you already know this. In my neighborhood, there is a community managed public park. There's a community managed playground. There's a community managed lake. There's door-to-door segregation of waste and recycling. There's smart lighting everywhere. There's even a community managed sewage treatment plant from which the water refills the lake. It can be done. And these are the sorts of things that we want to see improved in our local neighborhood. And all of this was done with mostly local citizens taking the initiative to make this happen. I'll stop there, except to say that this is the canvas of work for such interventions. We need to build on public problem solving, build state capacity and support state capacity as citizens. We must encourage and enable citizens to be co-managers of the city, not just consumers of public services. We need to build an ecosystem of parity between state, market, and society. And that's what creates the glue for public problem solving. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwin, for leaving us with the idea of the glue and how do we take it from there. Because we are running a little late on time, I will just ask Binju Abraham to come in now and put forward PRADAN's experience on various models of collaborative governance.
Thank you, Anjali. Is the PowerPoint visible?
It is. Could you just expand it? Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Anjali, Radhika, and all the team at INHAF for organizing this and inviting me. It's an honor to be here with such eminent people. And honestly, it's been a very educative evening, especially that urban is something that I do not know at all. And as Anjali was telling, the COVID has actually pushed us to think about urban reality aspect as well, especially in the migrant context. A large number of our community were really in trouble this year because of the sudden lockdown. And so we had to get into that whole migrant problem. So we understood that, the areas where PRADAN works, almost every household has a migrant to either Delhi, Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai, and these places. And 70% of them are seasonal migrants. So our house is a rain-fed and mainly a paddy cultivation, paddy growing area. And people would actually move out in the month of December and come back in the month of June, July, again to invest in the kharif crops from the savings that they have from the migration. And then they again move out. The urban, we call the sardar, the people who are the middlemen, they actually sometimes even invest in these villages so that they come back to cities to work. So as somebody was telling, there is so much correlation between urban and rural. The economy is, transacting, the people are moving. So we're beginning to understand. And so PRADAN is also beginning to start a program with migrant, but largely for all these years, we were working with rural programs. And one program that that became suddenly popular in the state of Jharkhand is what we are calling is as the mango orchard in the upland, This has become the state's flagship program, launched by the Chief Minister of Jharkhand, called Virsa Harit Gram Yojana. So this is something that we have been working for a long time, but now with the large number of migrants coming back, this is a program where you generate employment as well as livelihood. So an acre of land, so this is a scheme now under MGNREGA. For those who don't know, MGNREGA is a legislative guarantee of 100 days of employment in the village or in the vicinity of village, and it's a law in India. So under NREGA, we have actually added this as an activity where for an acre, the budget is around 3.5 lakhs, and out of that 2.5 is a labor component for a period of 5 years. So that is the model that I'm going to talk about. And yeah, so this is the small portion where I'm talking from, Jharkhand, the red circle that you see. And yeah, I'll be mostly sharing my experience of working in this program. I'm taking one block where PRADAN works. So PRADAN has around 400 to 500 professionals working from agriculture, management, social science, different background, and we are placed in 125 blocks of Central Eastern India, as Anjali was telling. And we work in a team of 4 or 5 people of multidisciplinary team, where we actually plan for 15 years perspective plan and break them into smaller plans. Largely what we do is we organize communities into groups of what we call as SHG groups, the women collectives. We also organize communities into commercial collectives like cooperatives and producer companies. We strengthen the communities' carrying capacities. Most of the people we work with are tribals, largely tribal. So they have forest, upland, lowland. There's a lot of land. They're we call resource-rich poor, so we work on improving the carrying capacity of the natural resources by putting up irrigation systems, bunding, leveling, plantations, things like that. And the third thing that we do is developing a livelihood system on that communities on forest-based, agriculture-based, livestock-based livelihood system that communities are either traditionally doing or we introduce newly. And fourth, we work with the governments in mainstreaming many of the government programs. So one of the block that we work is Torpa, very near the place where I currently am coming from. So as you see, just to give a profile of the people that we work with, it is 85% tribals. The ST means scheduled tribe, and the remaining are from the backward communities. So there's not any other community that tribal. So the sex ratio is good, but literacy is bad. Irrigation is just 13%, and in some blocks we have 8%, 7%. We get good rainfall, and as you see, the in average land holding is around 2 acres, but out of these only half an acre of land is what they bring under cultivation, productive cultivation, but another half acre is they invest, but they don't get productive returns, and almost 1 acre remains wasteland. Therefore, the average annual income is just 55,000 rupees per year, and the source of income is agriculture, livestock, forest, and I said a large income comes from remittance from migration. Productivity, as I said, major crop is paddy. Productivity, the national average for paddy is around 5 tons. What we have is just 2 tons here. And then we also have, these are very hilly, undulating terrain, so there's a weak infrastructure. We don't have a typical panchayat, kind of a very robust governance system like we have in few other parts of the country. There is witch hunting, there is early marriage issue, there are discriminatory practices. Most of the program on health, education, there is very little access of these programs, and it is Naxal prone. This is military, groups that are armed and want to actually take over the state. So Maoist based organization. So that's the status. What I'm going to talk about is the challenges or complexities or even fun of putting together a collaborative governance framework in the context of this mango orchard. So what you see in the screen now is a village. So it's not very visible. It's a Google image that I took. So this is a wasteland, typical terrain, and then you have these are lowlands. Is my pointer seen, Anjali?
Yes, yes. We can
Yeah. So these are lowlands, which is like there is water availability from June, once the rain starts from June, July till December. So a lot of paddy is grown in this patch. But in the other patch, what they grow is like millets or upland paddy, which the returns are very, very less. And then you have this huge hillock wasteland. And these are the housing colonies that you see where the communities live. And many of the communities have forests, but this village specifically doesn't have a forest. It had a forest which is now denuded. So it is in this context that, as you see, these are mango plantations. So these uplands which had which were wastelands or were little used, we have converted them into a fenced area with irrigation. And you see these small holes are the wells that you see, and these are small tanks that you see to harvest water. And there are a few other watershed interventions there. But then I just want to quickly stop here to talk about what is the intervention. The intervention is that it's a 1 acre of land where you have 100 mango trees, and from the 4th year onwards, each acre of land would give you 1 lakh rupees of income. And you could be under NREGS. So this is something that we have been trying from 2003 onwards. What kind of variety, what is the spacing? So these are high density Amrapali variety, which we work with the IARI, the Indian Agriculture Research Institute, and we have fine-tuned it for this agroecological area. So I know the time is less. I'll quickly talk about how we are now scaling up this thing, how it is working. So, so there is an SHG. So we have at the village level, SHG. I'll take you to the next slide first, quickly So as you see, we have SHG institutions at the village level, and we have at the hamlet level, we have SHG institutions. At the village level, we have village organization. Then there is a federation of the SHG institutions at the panchayat level, and then they have a block federations. So these SHG institutions begin as savings and credit group, but over the time, because they come as groups, they become very powerful actors and social institutions. And we have 2 wings of this. One is a commercial unit, the other is a rights and entitlement based institution. So this as somebody was talking about, citizen networks or in the neighborhood group. So one of the things that we were looking at is to form network of the community. So we believe that communities, if they form groups, can actually make significant change in their life. So while in the NRLM, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, we saturated the formation of SHG institutions. The 2 innovations that we are doing. One is the SHG institutions, we are creating a block level cooperative, which hosts a large number of agriculture entrepreneurs and community resource persons and cadres who actually help the farmers or the mango orchard growers to take up cultivation in a systematic manner. So the cooperative ensures that you get inputs, you get the production services, and you get to market your mangoes and the intercropping vegetables that you do. And then on the right, you see there is a block level citizen center run by the block federation, which actually acts as a grievance, awareness, and enrollment unit for entitlement based programs like NREGS. And they have a unit in the Gram Panchayat, and they have entitlement cadres. So there are these SHG women, they have themselves become what we call as constitutional Didi, Samvidhan Sathi, we say in Hindi. And they go and actually talk about the Indian constitution and how the schemes are flows from that. And it is that they're not mere beneficiaries, but it is their right to actually ask for 100 days. And so those who don't have a job card, they these entitlement cadres help them prepare the job cards. If they have any grievance, they come to the Gram Panchayat help desk. If the Gram Panchayat is not able to deal with the problems, they actually go to the citizen help desk at the block level. Now I come back to the previous slide. So SHG, so there are more stakeholders in making this orchard successful, but I have broadly categorized them in 6 buckets. One is this SHG institution. As I said, they are hugely involved in social mobilization, raising awareness, enrollment and grievance help desk, and seeking accountability, and also seeking gender negotiation spaces. Like, a large number of SHG women have become the SHG mates. So in REGA, each work site is manned by a supervisor whom we call as mates. So these mates, so earlier what was happening in NREGA was that there was no planning process from the bottom up. It was largely the district and the block telling 2 or 3 activities which has to be done by the villages and the panchayats. So instead of that, what the SHG institutions have done is that they have worked with the Gram Panchayats to make sure that they prepare village development plans for NREGA. And initially the activities were largely big roads and big tanks. We have shifted from that to more livelihood-based assets, like I was telling, small tanks, bunding, leveling, plantations, and things like that. So the SHG institutions and panchayats are working together to prepare village development plans. The SHGs have actually replaced so in the earlier times, the block was actually in a connivance with the local tekeda, the contractors, and a lot of other development middlemen who used to be around the block headquarters. And this is replaced by now the SHG institutions are actually, so there is a forum called Block Coordination Committee, and there's something called a Gram Panchayat Coordination Committee, where the SHG institutions and the panchayat and the bureaucracy come together to make plans and track progress of the implementation. So, so that's broadly what the SHG and Gram Panchayats do. And we also train so the line department which implements NREGAs were also not knowing what all activities could be done. Under the NREGA, there could be 182 activities, the shelf of activities, different activities that could be done. But the line department, so we train the line departments to ensure that there is variety of activities that can be taken up, ensure that there is a quality of planning that happens, and they do a certain level of empathetic engagement, ensure that timely wages and work is open. As I said, we were working with research institutions to develop the variety, and the spacing, so different aspects of technical. We continue to depend on 2-3 leading research institutions in the state to help us, problem solve some of the technical issues that we have. We work with state governments mainly to improve the program policies. I think all the different measures that I said happened only because of very progressive secretaries at the state level. And also the ensuring that the smooth funds flows to the grassroots. And finally, we have, as I said, farmer producer organization. This is the same SHG women's registered under a different entity, who actually, as I said, help in ensuring the input, output, market linkage, and production services. So that is how we do this, how this collaborative goes. What is the outcome? So there is an increased cropping intensity. So, and there is a reduction in the villages, like the village that I showed. Significant reduction in migration has happened because each family, because the migration is usually for 8,000 to 9,000 rupees a month. That's what they get when they go out. There is a significant improvement in the soil moisture content. There is an alternate land use pattern that you saw in the picture as you saw. Incomes have been raised to roughly around 1 lakh in a year. There is a transparency and quality implementation of MGNRHs the way it is happening now. And the SHG institutions and panchayats, and the panchayat also has got a lot of space now in planning and implementation. There is a greater awareness of the citizens' rights, and they are seeking accountability and grievance redressals. There is a shift from, traditionally the SHG institutions were seen as microcredit groups. So there is a significant shift to becoming a group that facilitates collaborative local governance. And also there is a devolution of funds and functionaries and their capacities. I'll quickly do 2 slides more. What are the key drivers of this collaboration? One is this strong, social capacities that is led by the institutions of women. Second is that there is a lot of innovative community processes and institutional strengthening methods and large cadre of volunteers that we have done. We have something called Gram Panchayat Organizational Development Program. Anjali knows it. She has been a part of it and helping us do that. There's Gram Panchayat Help Desk, there's Block Citizen Center I mentioned, the Agriculture Entrepreneur, the SHG Narega Mates. So a large number of such innovative ways of improving community processes. The multi-stakeholder forum. So the state has been largely bureaucratic. So how do you turn that into a space where citizens participate, where community institutions participate, and the Panchayati Raj elected representative participate, and the programs are planned together, implemented, monitored, and tracked together. There is also, at a very macro level, there is a better legislative environment and higher resource allocation for India now compared to the FRA hai, Narega hai, a lot of new acts that has come, which is very enabling. And it is important, as somebody was telling, a catalyst of people could be from CSOs or some other who actually can envision that, this collaborative governance to problem solve poverty. And the other important thing that we realize is it is important to see value and unique contribution that each institution can make, and the ability to bring them in a collaborative fashion at one point in time for a meaningful outcome. And that's very challenging, and it's thrilling to do that. The other thing is that you need to work both at the supply and demand side. You cannot, there are times when you work organizing communities, but you're not empathetic to the supply side. There are times when you work in a techno-managerial approach, supporting the state with technology and managerial efficiencies, but then you don't relate with the community side. When you work in a fashion where you can actually seamlessly look at the weakness and strength of both sides and help build that actually helps. And of course, as I said, the livelihood approach has to be a comprehensive approach where you actually look at social mobilization part, the natural resource management, strengthening the institutions, and the possibilities that, as rightly, Ashwini was telling, bringing together the market, state, and civil society together in one platform. And finally, not just investing in income generating activity, but focusing on, people, their capacities, the institutional processes, and the social norms and cultures, and at the same time engaging at the policy level. So one has to actually tweak with all of these, all these levels. Finally, the closing slide is, what are the challenges? So one is that, in this process, what you realize is that the state, though we created these SHG institutions over last 20-25 years, when they interact with the state actually looks at the SHG institution, the social institutions as a subservient local body, and where the accountability shifts from the frontline functionary to these SHG women. And that's very dangerous. That's what we are understanding. Secondly, at the senior bureaucracy level, there is a tacit understanding. Narega, there is always allocation, or there are, welfare programs, there is allocation. But then what happens is that there is allocation, but they don't release the resources. And there is always an unspent from the allocation. That's a big challenge. Third, the biggest thing, as Kanchi was telling, about this real estate, there is power. There is power nexus that exists in the local grassroots of the local bureaucracy, of the Thekedar, the contractors, the local mafias, the local elites, and to break that and give powers in the hands of the SHG institutions and the local village governments is a challenging process, and it's very threatening. It takes a lot of energy. State continues to be largely bureaucratic, very centralized, resource trap, and unwilling to be accountable. And there is a lot of struggle. A new secretary comes, you will have to educate him freshly, and their attitude and all rapport building takes a lot of time. Citizens' perception about themselves because of colonial moorings is very challenging. We continue to find that people don't think that they are actually citizens. They think that they're living in some, some Raja, we use these terms, Modi government, and we use these words, and it actually amplifies that there's one big leader who is going to, liberate us all, that kind of an idea. Little acknowledgement of local government as institutions of governance. Rather, they are seen as extension arms of the bureaucracy with no clear role in planning and implementation or devolution of funds, functionary and functions. Two more points. There is a witch hunting of civil society, including PRADAN, where if the state sees you as organizing communities to ask for unemployment allowance or delay compensation, or some malpractice in the Narega work site, or huge delay payment. So, and when you organize communities to seek accountability or redressal of grievances in a quick manner, the state begins to, stop your projects or, finds, faults in you. And finally, the big policy enablers like PESA, some of you know, it is Panchayat Extension for Scheduled Areas, where the village councils, the Gram Sabhas, are given very huge powers, and those rules and regulations have not been made in the state. The second is this, State Finance Commission. From the revenues of the center, they give Center Finance Commission money to the panchayats. But in Jharkhand and many other states, the State Finance Commission doesn't allocate any funds to the local governments. So there are big policy enablers which, if triggered, can create more collaborative local governance. And this is this Arti Devi. She was working as a migrant laborer in Andamans, and here is she, happily settled in the village, earning $1 lakh a month. Yeah, I stop here.
Thank you, Binju. Thank you very much for that very insightful presentation. So we are quite a bit running behind on time, but so I would like to ask the organizers, how much time do we have? Can we take about 10 minutes to go through the questions and answers? How do we go about it? Any thoughts? Okay, let us just, probably I'll take a few questions which are there already. I find that the various conversations that we've had can actually very well map can very well be mapped onto each other, and we will have a lot of, for example, even the last presentation can be mapped onto urban areas and understanding governance, and there is a lot to learn over there. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of a time right now, but I think we'll take a few questions. So I'll just pick up a few questions. There are some questions to Alejandro, which is asking what are the strategies that were adopted to ensure the housing provided is actually used by the target group, as well as what were the strategies adopted to keep land prices down in the redevelopment areas. How has the engagement been managed with the local government, considering that it is 15 years now? So Alejandro, would you like to come in and provide some answers to these questions that have been raised?
Thank you, Anjali. What's a privilege for me from here to Colombia to share with all of you your ideas. So I am learning a lot here. So all the presentations are very pertinent for Latin American cities. So I am very happy to share with you. And yes, this process of innovation, for us, the key issue is to connect with implementation, because it's important that simultaneously you have a flexible process to improve and to learn, because there is no complete answers, and you don't have the whole picture at the end. And I must say that about housing and property, the process is ongoing in Medellin, because we are now reaching a challenges related with the gentrification. When you improve some areas, this increase the possibility of interest of different actors and so on. So we are not in this problem in a very high condition, but because the municipality improved many areas that has a very complex and precarious condition. So the transition process is ongoing. but I don't have answers about what is going on. And we are working with community and with government, trying to develop a new strategies and tools in relation with regulations that could protect communities of the process of gentrification that start to happen in some areas. But I don't have answer for that.
Okay. Thank you, Alejandro. I'm going to take two questions for Professor Jacob Torfing. The first one is that you talked about the need for a multi-collaborated effort, but I thought it would be great if you could provide an example in terms of naming the country, if any, where such efforts have been undertaken before. And there's another one which says that where senior government officers subvert the system in their own departments, even to the extent of non-compliance with the procedures and laws, how do you ensure the cooperation in innovative projects that have to operate outside chartered territory? Professor Torfing? I don't know if Professor Torfing is there. I don't
see him too.
Oh, okay. I guess we will have to then skip these questions. Couple of other questions that have come up. I think, Kanchi, you have actually answered a lot of your questions is what I'm seeing, right? Yeah. If there are any other questions that I am not able to scroll through these very quickly, but there is one question which says that, do municipal and planning laws have a critical or marginal role in enabling collaborative governance? If so, then what are the key changes to be made in the municipal and planning laws so that inclusive collaborative governance actually happens? I can just put it out to the panel.
Oh, let me try to take a stab.
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize that the majority of the problems we face are political and social. We must not make the mistake of thinking that they are technical, social, or that there's something wrong with the design of the law or the language of the law and so on and so forth. That's just a big mistake. People have to recognize that the problem is fundamentally political. Now, unfortunately, you have a very large number of people who will say the problem is political, but my preferred response is not. And you have to sort of work to overcome that. That's just the reality. What I find is that while it is difficult to achieve that kind of mindset shift in every place, it is certainly possible to achieve that shift in a limited number of places and begin to make changes happen in those places, and then use them as examples of what can be done in other places. This is really the only thing that I feel works well with people who are not politically inclined or not inclined to engage the governance system itself. I think if you look at the law in India, I mean, the law is like a little bit of a bizarre thing because the law is actually much better than the implementation of the law across India. So there's no point in going and saying the law is really bad. The implementation of the law is even worse than the law. So I would say that first, if you can get to a reasonable implementation of the law as it exists, that itself would be a big step. And I would try to take advantage of the fact that the law exists and go and demand that it be implemented, rather than try to go through one more iteration of reworking a law and finding out that that also is not going to be implemented.
Just want to quickly add to that. Basically, I think while I do agree, but I think there's some newer challenges, especially from the environmental point of view, while we are working with the law and looking at the limits of that law itself, laws or policies. I think these things, these experiences could be built in, whether it's in municipal laws or environmental laws and other kinds of governance frameworks, which newer challenges of say climate change, the ecological lived ecologies, these definitely need a little more of rethinking in the current context, because they've been written and thought of at a different point of time. So completely agree about the political economy of how laws operate and how they're used and misused. But I think some opportunities are there to even build on experiences of using that law to shape that law.
But I would say that even rethinking that is a political thing. How are you going to get anybody to rethink that? That itself is a political thing.
Agreed.
Thank you. Ashwin, while you're at it, there is another question to you which says, how do you ensure sustainability of neighborhood initiatives? Many a times good examples have failed to survive after the founders leave the scene.
Well, that's like saying that things were better in my father's time. How do I derive the benefit of that today? I mean, frankly, every generation has an obligation to make its life better by its efforts. It can't sort of, expect that good outcomes that other people work to create are somehow their birthright to be sustained even without their participation. I think, look, I generally tend to take the view that good governance starts with self-governance. And if you are willing to be a participant in improving outcomes in your neighborhood, there's no reason why you should have a founder problem. You are the founder for your life.
I see another question, which is like, what advice would you have to avoid greenwashing? Though I'm not able to understand what that is really. But there is a question from Sherwin that says, what is...
You might have encountered that word more than anyone else.
It's basically trying to give you a facade that, it's a lot of compensatory afforestation efforts.
Sure.
It's basically
plants that never grow.
A facade saying that we'll take care of environmental issues, ecological issues. And there are a lot of prefixes that we have of eco-friendly and compensatory and all there are many. There's a full discussion that could avoiding it. I think really recognizing what is being said and being spoken about as greenwashing. There's a huge body of work that has actually provided evidence that certain things and certain kind of solutions are actually greenwashing and they've not worked. So I think definitely recognizing that and going through those experiences will help us also deal with it, whether it's in urban areas, peri-urban areas, or rural areas.
Alejandro, I was just wondering on this whole question about politics and collaborative governance. Would you have some insights, especially from the social urbanism strategies that you have implemented, and what has been the experience there?
Yes, in our experience in Medellin, in the shadow of the most interesting and powerful initiatives, always there is a strong agenda and combination of partners. So this was very important in the history of Medellin innovation and social innovation. And the first you need to have confidence and trust to each other. And this is not easy, and you need time to build it. And it's everyday work that you have to push and to work with it. So this is our experience, and it's not easy, but always every day we have challenges, and this agreement in society that Medellin developed is not perfect, but is in some way is a very strong good thing that the city has. And so you need time, you need work every day, and you need to develop trust with actions. And this is the message for the governments. It's not easy from the governments to have to do that, but it's very important.
Thank you. I will end with one last question, which is to Binju, where I would really like to understand from you, Binju, that in the last couple of months, especially, where you have worked at the forefront of the pandemic in terms of gearing communities to, be able to address some of these issues. you did see a lot of collaboration with the state happening. The state actually stepped out and said that we need your hands and feet on the ground because we are not able to reach there. What would you define as the role of the state in these collaborations, multifaceted collaborations that PRADAN has done across different domains with the state government in, just responding to the pandemic? And how do you see that going forward?
Yeah, I think what happened in pandemic was that so there is in Jharkhand and all the tribal areas, what we have seen is that there is a distinct culture difference between the state and the citizens. The bureaucracy doesn't know even the verbal language, or even they do not understand the local culture and all. So there is a distinct difference, and they are indeed extension of the typical colonial attitude. But what happened in the pandemic was that everybody was going to be affected. All the block development officer and his entire team of people were equally susceptible to this. And there was a certain level of panic and confusion, and the state was resource strapped. And so they had to but become compassionate and extension. And then there was this whole, because of this SHG institution, there was a huge cadre of men and women who were, either community resource persons or Pashu Sakhis or other such, service providers, and the state needed them badly. And however, what happened was that also the panchayats were the first institution that the citizens could actually go and approach, because the bureaucracy doesn't listen to the panchayat or the citizen. It actually listens to the higher bureaucracy. So what happens is citizens always actually fall upon the panchayats, and the first quarantine centers were actually started by the panchayats by opening their own panchayat houses and panchayat offices, and the SHG institution people actually bought the cot, the mattress, and the panchayat out of their some untied fund actually made provision for the sanitizing chemicals that were needed, and some cleaning and some community kitchen arrangements were done. So I think what we saw in COVID times is a very temporary phenomena, and I think the struggle of citizens, participating with the government would be a challenge, and it has to be interfaced with the local democratic bodies. At the grassroots, the local democratic bodies are completely dysfunctional in Indian context. It's the bureaucracy. I mean, the chief minister is always above the chief secretary of the state, but that's not how they at the panchayat. The panchayat president is below everybody. So that has to change. And to one last question, I think it is completely political game. One easy answer that I think is to form groups from bottom up, groups that is not just confrontative to the state, but a group that is purposive. And I have felt that the image that I showed of Gufu, I mean, the moment the village begins to understand, have a vision, and makes a movement, it is very difficult for bureaucracy to be hindrance or a market to be hindrance. They begin to find stakeholders. And so the first primary thing is to be groups. Initially, the group formation seems to be very apolitical. Group bana rahe hain, bas itna ho raha hai. But when the groups come together, they talk about witch hunting, they talk about elections, they talk about corruption. So they not just do savings and credit and livelihood. That's my experience.
Thank you. With this, I kind of hand it over to Kirti. I think I've tried to take as many questions as possible and tried to also keep time, but I haven't been very successful. I can see that. But over to you, Kirti.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjali. Radhika, my video is stopped. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Kirti. Maybe you
can't see me.
I cannot see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, doesn't matter.
Carry on.
Okay, thank you, Anjali.
We can see you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Anjali, for this very insightful full webinar. Really very, very insightful. Many good ideas, interesting concept, and innovative proposal that deserve a lot of thinking and exploration have been presented, and it's been very, very rich in every conceivable way. And thank you very much, Anjali. And I must say this, though I'm thanking Anjali for INHAF, she is a part of the family. Not many may know that she managed and nurtured INHAF for our first 6 years in its early days. And many of the ideas that we are working with are the ones for which she had laid foundations. So thank you very, very much. We are also very grateful to the distinguished panel for this very rich and enriching sort of sharing. And I really want to thank each one with the name. Of course, Dr. Ashwin, Mahesh, thank you. Kanchi, Kohli, thank you very much, for your observations. Alejandro, very inspiring. Professor Jacob, talking about innovations, touched very much. And Binju, Abraham, thank you especially to you for wandering into this wrong place. This is an urban jungle, and I'm delighted that you brought in the rural perspective, very enriching. I have a small little kind of land plot. We have planted 3,000 neem trees. I was just thinking maybe I think I would replace them with mangoes because I love mangoes too. There is no time to kind of come back. But and Anjali, I hope you'll allow me. I think a little space to ask 2 questions that I have. In fact, 2 observations that I want to make on the subject itself. We're talking about working together. We're talking about collaborative arrangements between 3 arms of the system. We're talking about government, which has authority, mandate, power, and resources. We're talking about private sector, which has entrepreneurship, skills, access to resources, profit-making ability, efficiency, and capital. We're of course talking about civil society, which has values, which pick up causes, which has morality, which has concerns and priorities for the poor, marginalized, environment, nature, ecology, and all that. What we are not talking about, which I think is the 4th pillar of the society, is the non-formal sector. They have a number of very large numbers. They have inbuilt sustainability. They have a very large labor force. They are invisible city builders, city makers. They translate ideas and concepts into reality. They deliver services. They generate employment, and they contribute to GDP. They should be seen as a very powerful power block when it comes to collaboration, when it comes to working together, when it works to developing system. And another question that I have, once again, while listening to all of you, is this: that is creative systemic integration possible or not? Like, say, for instance, we are doing some work on the smart cities, and smart cities are being managed under special purpose vehicles. Now, that has been done because they wanted to have implementation of high priority, big investment project. And smart cities are implemented by SPVs. Now there's a concern about exclusion of elected representatives from implementation. And that's a very legitimate concern. On the other hand, the concern is for efficiency and effective implementation of program. Is it possible that both could be kind of, creatively synthesized so that the efficiency of the formal sector, of the corporate, and concern of the elective governance comes in the picture? Those are just kind of things that I thought I would mention. I also wanted to kind of tell you that the next webinar, which is taking place on 14th, this is the 14th webinar, is taking place on 3rd September. It is on building gender responsive urban spaces and services, and will be anchored by Kalpana Vishwanathan. Kindly participate. And last thing that I wanted to kind of request all of you who are there is not to forget to share your feedback on webinars you are attending. We need to learn from your response. We learn from you how good or not so good they are, what needs to change and improve. The feedback response from you, when available, will strengthen this work very much. So thank you very much, everyone. And I also lastly thank my colleagues at Studio INHAF for meticulous work behind the scene, for their efficiency and cooperative spirit. They're playing a very big role in successful implementation of the webinar series. And therefore, thanks to Dr. Hariharan, thanks to Shivani, thanks to Radhika, thanks to Nikki, and thanks to Neeta. Thank you very much. We're very grateful to the team, grateful to Anjali for this great amount of planning work of bringing this together. We are enriched in the process, and thank you very much. Hope there'll be time to see you again in one of the other webinars, which because we're doing 30, and there are many offshoots from this one which we'd like to examine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kirti, and thank you to INHAF and the team for giving me this opportunity. Thanks to all the participants. It was wonderful listening to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.